in the raw. RK's Guyana Free Media. And I'm your friend and host, your brother, Haji Dr. Roshan in the raw. Today is Wednesday, the 18th of January, and how fast this year is already going. Matrimony is right next door. Now, I have the Stabrook News, Tuesday, January 17th, in my hand. And I'm looking at the article. The High Court throws out opposition MP's challenge to suspension. Suspended MPs ordered to pay $350,000 costs each to the state. And I know many people do not always have the facility to read. Some don't have the ability to read. And then because of my articulation and also my take and commentaries, many people are happy, and many hundreds and thousands upon thousands and tens of thousands get interested in various topics. So the MP's court challenge of suspension is thrown out. That's the opposition. Those, I'm going to show you their photographs. And some of them I appreciate and respect very much. Persons like Natasha Singh Lewis, persons like Ganesh Mahipal. I respect the others, but Viceroy Jordan, I really don't know much about him. But anyone who would misbehave in the most respected sanctum of the nation's governance and this writing and the promulgation of law and order, representing the nation's, the peoples, the ethnicities of this country. It pains me. And it caused me to have great disrespect for them. And here, to see Natasha Singh Lewis in this madness was disappointing to me. She has a right to her political choices. But to behave like this in Parliament, which went viral around the world and brought disgrace to Guyana because they were inspired, I think, of something that happened in Ghana, where they were fighting and jumping on desks and beating and kicking and hitting and so on. They were inspired by that and tried to do that, and even damage the speaker's MACE so that an order, a law, an understanding could not have been established. And they were wrong. So I'll give you that article, ladies and gentlemen. The illegal challenge to the National Assembly's Committee of Privileges decision to suspend 8 opposition members of Parliament was yesterday thrown out, with the court ruling it does not have the jurisdiction to intervene in the internal matters of the House. The House means the Parliament. So the judge or the courts does not have that authority to intervene in internal affairs of the Parliament or the House of Guyana. Now, I am no legal specialist, but I am a person with common sense, a thought. I try to articulate and to use some wisdom, and I knew this case would have gone to the garbage heap. And whichever lawyer they're paying should have known that they will lose the case. And now each one of them has to pay $350,000 cost to the state, which I think was unnecessary, and they should have accepted their penalty. Or first of all, don't bring shame to Guyana. Miss Natasha Singh Lewis, Annette Ferguson, Viceroy Jordan, Sherrod Duncan, Tabacha Sarabo, Haji, Maureen Philadelphia, Christopher Jones, Ganesh Mahipal. Well, we know Ganesh Mahipal and Christopher Jones and Sherrod Duncan. You could expect virtually anything from them. And they really don't really care about the respectability and care only about their political confusion and hateful dispensation that could be spread in their political spewing of venom and hate in the country. That is my personal opinion, friends and family, ladies and gentlemen. In the ruling handed down by Justice Damon Young in the High Court in Demerara, and I did some work with this amazing young lady in the National Commission of Law and Order, and she's brilliant, understands law, and she obviously knows what she is saying. The MPs were also ordered to pay costs to the sum of $350,000 each by February 6th. The ruling came months after the 8 MPs mounted a legal challenge against their suspension, in which they said that the principles of natural justice were breached as they were not given a hearing before the Committee of Privileges. Now, the lawyer should have known that the Committee of Privileges is a creature of Parliament. And the Parliament is the highest decision-making body in the land. And that's just a mere creature which could be controlled by Parliament. And therefore, the Speaker of the House, being the head and the controller of Parliament, is the boss. The MPs were suspended from Parliament over their tumultuous bid on December 29, 2021 to prevent the passage of the Natural Resource Fund NRF bill, which saw the forcible removal of the parliamentary MACE. I mean, that is such a serious thing, to try to steal the MACE of Parliament. And even in the process, they damaged it. That is cause for imprisonment, and I hope the police and criminal law enforcement authorities are involved in this, so all of these people here, at least some of them, would face huge fines in the criminal court and even jail. At least some of them. The Privileges Committee had recommended that Opposition Chief Whip Christopher Jones, Ganesh Mahipal, Sherrod Duncan, and Natasha Singh Lewis be suspended for 4 consecutive sittings, and Annette Ferguson, Viceroy Jordan, Tabacha Sarabo, Haji, and Maureen Philadelphia be suspended for 6 consecutive sittings. So they were having more. Obviously, then, they were more violent. They actually risked the life of a staff of Parliament, a professional in the Parliament, whose name I can't pick up at the moment, but maybe it will turn up later in the article, referencing court cases from the United Kingdom and Fiji. In similar matters, Justice Young said that the court forms the view that the National Assembly is vested with exclusive control over the management of its proceedings when it comes to internal operations. The National Assembly is empowered by the Constitution itself to make its own rules for the conduct of its business and for the conferment of powers and privileges of its members. You mean the lawyer that managed this for this team of lawbreakers did not know this? And obviously charge fees unless one of the top members, who is a senior counsel in the opposition in Parliament, represented them for free. The National Assembly is empowered. Justice Young pointed out that the court agrees wholeheartedly with the proposition of the cases decided over the centuries that matters of such nature are not cognizable in the court except in instances where there has been some violation of the provisions of the Constitution. If the Constitution is interfered with or played with, then the court has some authority. The matters of which the applicants, in this case, complaint arose out of internal proceedings of the House, which are not specifically provided for in the Constitution, and as such fall within the category of being wholly internal proceedings of the National Assembly, which this court ought not to interfere with, she said, and delivering her ruling yesterday afternoon. Further, Justice Young stated that the argument by the applicant citing a breach of that, ladies and gentlemen, is my traffic stop to calm the body, distress the mind for a few seconds. Further, Justice Young stated that the argument by the applicants citing a breach of the constitutional rights is without merit, since it stemmed from the internal proceedings of the National Assembly and are not justicable inquiry. Justice Young emphasized and that with the applicants taking oath of the office, they were aware and subject to the rules of laws governing the House. And I'm going to skip some paragraphs. The Privileges Committee, which produced the appealed report, is a creature, I told you that, of the National Assembly and has been established by the standing orders. Its functions have been defined by the standing orders to which all members of Parliament, including the applicants, must adhere to, Justice Young said. At this point, the judge ruled that the applicant's case is not exceptional and does not warrant exercise in the constitutional jurisdiction. The court refrains from inquiring into the internal proceedings of the National Assembly and from exercising its jurisdiction to determine the merits of the applicants, she stated. Justice Young also pointed out that the court is mindful of trespassing in the realm of the legislature and usurping the authority of this arm of the state to regulate its own procedure, which is specifically provided for in the Constitution. So it's the legislature which makes the laws, but which cannot contravene the Constitution unless a special procedure is established to change the Constitution. Friends and family, amendments to the Constitution. That's another whole big topic by itself. Now, their main spokesman to appear, Shadow Attorney General Royston Ford SC, had filed a fixed date application with urgent notice in the High Court. During the court's proceedings, Attorney General Anil Nandalal SC had filed a notice of application disputing the court's jurisdiction to hear the application. Nandalal was resolute that Parliament, as a sovereign entity, is accorded absolute and exclusive privilege that allows it to run its own affairs, free from outside interference. Who also represented the suspended MPs, however, contended that not having been afforded their constitutional right of being heard, the suspended MPs have a related right to approach the court for redress. And that is where Anil Nandalal, our Attorney General, an amazing legal mind with tremendous prowess in interpretation of law in this country, has obviously eaten up once again Roysdale Ford Senior Counsel. At the end of the judge's ruling, in consideration of cost, Nandalal proposed that each applicant can't pay costs of $250,000. However, in rebuttal, an attorney for the applicant, Selwyn Peters, asked the court to not consider costs. He argued in his plea. Selwyn Peters now is a very fine guy, but he's a lawyer. And therefore, people hire lawyers to represent them, and they will sell their service. You can't blame Selwyn Peters. But he's a man who would make an excellent judge as well. He argued that his plea for court's discretion and his clients were not in a position to pay costs, and reminded the court that they were suspended without pay and have not worked for months. He said that the court ruling should be regarded as punishment enough, as the parliaments will be aware of the rules and obligations going forward, which means he now concurs. Mr. Roysdale Ford now concurs with the brilliant mind of the Attorney General, Anil Nandalal. We have saying Anil Nandalal, but it's Anil Nandalal. So he has to concur that Anil Nandalal, our Attorney General, is a man with a superior intellectual capacity to interpret law by suggestion. And this is what is being said by many people in the country. However, Justice Young, after listening to the plea, set costs of $350,000 per applicant to be paid in or before February 6th. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to skip a few paragraphs. In the end, Ferguson grabbed the ceremonial mace and made a dash for the door, but was tackled by Sergeant at Arms. Ah, that's the gentleman. He was almost killed. He was beaten and hurt. And I think that's another matter in the court. And another parliamentary security officer. At that time, both opposition MPs rushed to her aid, even as Singh was still on the floor making his presentation. Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance Gail Teixeira later moved a motion to refer the 8 MPs to the Committee of Privileges. The committee's report, which recommended the suspension, was tabled in Parliament on July 21st and adopted around 1:30 p.m. on July 22nd, after the APNO and AFC MPs left the chambers. But of course, the lawyer that represented them now concurs with the seniority of legal interpretation of Attorney General Anil Nandalal. Has to be. The suspended MPs were asking the court to declare that the report of the committee privilege on the privilege motion dated January 24, 2022 was unconstitutional, null, void, and of no legal effect. They were also asking the court to determine that the report breached the principles of natural justice and blah, 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 blah. We passed that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to have been able to create this in the raw, which started at the count at Ashman's building, when there was an attempt to steal an election, to steal a nation, and when they brought shame onto Guyana world over, and they, the opposition, are still in their dreamlike state of victory, but they can't produce their SOPs. Your friend, your brother, me, Haji, Dr. Roshan can thank you, the listeners, for making this program so popular. And it's my pleasure to take my time and my skill to bring the presentations of In the Raw Archives Guyana Free Media to you. Your friend, your brother, me, Haji, Dr. Roshan can say thank you. A farewell, friends.